So here we are with the Gradebook, and we're going to revise everything we've been looking at over the last few lessons. A few things I want to sort out. One thing I've noticed, by the way, is that that's centered and we just want that right aligned. That's not a major change, but it's there. The other thing that we want to do is we want to introduce the idea that actually we need to know what the totals are for these columns. And one of the effective ways of doing that is to go to the 2, right click and insert a new row. Then if we put totals there, or another way of doing that is to put maximum, and again left align that. We don't need the bold on there, and then we can set these to a value of 10. And I could have done a fill series, but it's not that important. The most important thing here is to say, well, I don't want to add those all up, I'm too lazy, and I might find out I've got to change them later. So if I do that, that solves that, and then remove the bold. But what I might do is, to make them stand out, choose a better color for them so they stand out. And that's worth noting. So what we've got is a figure to work from. That means that we can work out the percentage, what each student has got as a result of the overall mark. And that's going to be quite simple. That's going to be equal to that divided by the total. And we've got 35.357143, if I can read the numbers properly. And if I pull that down, then we get some erratic numbers and divisions by 0. But that's because, as you've probably spotted, I've used that, but when I pull it down, relative addressing has also pulled down the 70. I don't want that value to change. I want that to stay there. So all I'm going to do is press the F4 key on my keyboard. Let's put the dollars either side that says lock the column, lock the row. And now when I pull that downwards, I now get the actual percentages. The other thing I need to do is, these aren't obviously percentages, these are decimals. And to make them into percentages that are readable, if I click on the little percent symbol there, I get a nice percentage symbol. And let's just center those there. Now what I want to do is estimate their grade. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, we're going to base this on the old GCSE structure of A star, A, B, and so on. And we have to have an estimation of what each grade is worth. So the structure that we had was A star, and then A, and then B, C, D, E, F, G, and then if you didn't achieve a grade, you got a U. I've got 2 A's there, and I shouldn't have. That's because when you fill something out, Excel says, oh, I've got one of those. Do you want the same one? And we don't. So I press the delete key to get rid of the star, press enter, and I've got that. So those are the results. Now, they do vary based upon each exam, but we're not here to investigate the structure of the exam program. What we're here to do is learn about Excel. So you don't need the rest of this nonsense. So how are we going to do this? Well, obviously I've got the table of data here, and what I need to know is what percentage is the minimum to get that grade. Now, we're going to stick this as a relatively arbitrary value. I'm going to stick this as 0.1. And then all I'm going to do is grab those two and use the bottom right hand corner just to autofill those through. So 10% of the paper will give us a G, 40% of the paper will give us a D, and so on. It's relatively accurate. It's not hugely accurate, but that's fine. And let's make this a percentage so that it works nicely for our system. I'm going to center that just so that I can, and maybe just to help myself out, maybe put the bit of borders around the outside. I'm also going to call this something, and we're going to call this grades, and that's going to help us. So we've named this group, this array of data. And so what we can now do is we can now use a VLOOKUP to look up this percentage here and identify it in this table, and then give us the result at the end. Now, at the moment, there is a fault here, but let's not worry about that. We'll come across that in a second, and I'll explain why it's a fault in a moment. So let's start the grade equals VLOOKUP, open brackets. And it says, what are we looking up? Well, we're looking up there. Where are we looking up? Well, I could select the table. It's a small table, but we've just named it grades. So I'm going to do that. And it's highlighted it to say, is that what you mean? And we go, yes, by putting a comma. The column index, where is the answer? Well, I want this to return the lettered grade from the percentage. So it's the second column. Remember, it's not the column it's in. It's not because it's in the P column, but in relationship to the data itself. So it's the second column of the data. Now, you can already see I've got 36% on the first one, and there is no 36%. So if I say false in exact match, it will come back with an error because there isn't a 36%. So what I want to do is I want to say, no, it's close to 36%. So I'm going to say true, an approximation. Close the bracket and press enter. Now I said to you there was going to be an error, and there it is. I get an NA. And you might look back at the formula and go, well, hold on, have I got this function wrong? Have I put something in wrong? And click in there and nothing seems to be wrong. And there isn't anything wrong with the formula itself. One of the things about the VLOOKUP is that the data you're analyzing needs to be in ascending order, and this is descending order. And that's the search criteria. So it wants it to go 0, 10, 20, 30. Because we're going the opposite way, it doesn't know what to do. And the quick and easy way of doing that is selecting the data and choosing sort. And instantly you can see it's now sorted itself out. So we've now got an E grade for this student, and I can now replicate that all the way down, and we've got some results. Now the thing is, I generated a set of random numbers here, and that's good, but they obviously produce a lot of relatively low results, and we've not got a good fair distribution. So let's see if we can generate those numbers again. So equals rand, but we want a number between, we want an integer, so we're going to use rand between. And then what I'm going to do is, we know the lowest grade is a 0 and the highest grade is 10. Now, you can't quite see that because it's condensing it down, but if you look at the formula bar, you can see what I've typed in. Equals rand between 0 to 10. So choose a value between 0 and 10, including 0 and 10. So if we put that, the first one is given us is 10, so it proves that it can use the upper boundary. Now let's take that down, and now let's take that across, and there we've got the values. Now, the problem with this is any change we make to this, and these are going to continuously alter itself. We've got something marked spill here. We'll worry about that in a moment. But these will change. So if I went into here and just changed the U to a lowercase u, all those values change and it becomes really quite poor. So what we need to do is stop that. So all I'm going to do is take those cells, Control C to copy the cells, and go to the first cell in the top corner, right click and just paste the values. Now the values are there, cemented in. Yes, it's done an update, but that's the last time it's going to do an update. We're just going to check on what this is complaining about. This one here is complaining about formula omits adjacent cells. So let's just see if it's cells we worry about, and it's not. We don't want to include the maximum. So what we can do is tell it to actually ignore error. And that's going to be true for all of these. So let's just run another cross and tell it to ignore error. If we then go down to here, again, what are we being told? We're being told that it omits, and that's going to be the same across. So what you can do is select all the cells with the error and then simply tell it to ignore error, and that will do it in all the cells there. You'll notice that because we've sorted this out and sorted the values out, we've now not got a spill error appearing. We've got a relatively weird number there, but that's because it's a mean average. If we don't want that, remember we can always click this to make it smaller and it will round up quite nicely. So we could decide we'll stick there. So we get an estimation. It's close enough to what we're looking for. We don't want an excessive value. So we've got a nice result there. We've got a nice distribution of results for this group of students here. So everything's looking quite nice. The thing is that having the mean average and having the modal average doesn't really help us massively unless we know that what we're dealing with as regards a range there. Now, so we might want to put in the min result and the max result. Now again, we've got to leave that relatively clear. I would suggest what we do instead is move these two down. So I've selected two rows, insert, and then we do minimum and maximum, and we'll select those, and again to make them tie in with the others, and then all we're going to do equals min. So what's the lowest value someone's achieved in that data there? And equals max. What's the maximum value someone's achieved in there? And we're not too surprised to see that the values we've set as our limits have appeared. But now let's pull that across. And now we've got some relatively nice figures. We've got that warning, but we can get rid of that by clicking on ignore. Just going to center those. And to match everything else, bold and italics. So we can see our distribution system is working relatively nicely, and it varies here, but we wouldn't expect to see something quite like that in the real world, but it's close enough. And it's quite nice to see in the results. Yes, we've got some random values here, but actually we've got everything's roughly round about the center, which is what you'd expect with a randomized number with a normal distribution. So we've got a really nice system there that allows us to look at the minimum and maximum. We've got the results for the students. We can see what they've got. We've used all the data. We've been able to use a CSV. We've got the grades coming in. We've got calculations of the min, max, and the means and the medians and modals and everything else in between. So we've used virtually everything we've looked at. We haven't used the HLOOKUP. We haven't used the index at the moment. We could filter this by results, but there's not enough data here. So in the next lesson, we're just going to have a look at some of the extensions that we can now move into. And later on, we will incorporate the index and the filters in later work where that becomes much more relevant. But for now, under the circumstances, that's the end of this revision exercise. And I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care.